20 minutes.
Yeah, we scored off the next set. Then I think a couple of sets later, we forced a goal line dropout. When if Hardacre had kicked it a bit more in field, Field would have scored. And and then we got the penalty, didn't we, for the ball strip?
And at that point, to be honest, I was like, oh, it's going to be a long night. And then, yeah, we got back into the game, and it's 6-all, and you start thinking, well, should we try and take a cheeky drop goal just before half time? Because at that point we seemed to be a bit more in the ascendancy.
Yeah, the first try you'd been building, hadn't you? You'd built back into the game off the back of a couple of penalties. There was the Partington one where he hit Connor on the floor because Connor had stamped on his shoulder, which, to be honest, I kind of was in the camp of you don't go down and then clop the guy around the chin like Partington did. But at the same token, what was Connor doing there?
I've got no idea, and I expected a red card at that point.
I don't think there was enough in it in terms of brutality to make it a card, but I didn't understand why the penalty, why he wasn't penalised first. And there was a chance for the ref to blow the whistle before Partington went and hit him, and Connor was asking for the high shot before Partington didn't even hit him.
He knew what was coming.
Yeah, he knew he was getting what he deserved. But anyway, that was a big factor, I think. Then we gave away a couple of penalties. You guys built really well and eventually scored the try.
Yeah. And then obviously, we didn't take the cheeky drop goal because we scored the try.
That was really good play by Lovadua. I think Wigan hadn't done enough video on him or something, because we've talked already this year about the dummies he can throw, and this one he didn't open the sea like he did against Wakefield, but
no.
But he created something, and do you know what? No blame on Field for not stopping Satai in that situation, because no fucking fullback in the league would have stopped him.
Satai does like to score against Wigan. He doesn't score many in a year, but he does like to score against Wigan.
I thought, that came off the back of, I can't remember if it was, it was a sloppy knock on by us. Willie Isa, who was struggling a bit at that point with a shoulder injury, knocked on after some scratchy play by us about 25 metres out from your line, and then we sort of, it seemed like we were just, you hit us with a sucker punch, and probably 6-all was a fair crack at half time, but you going in 12-6 was great for your side.
Yeah, and then again second half we came out in a sleep again.
I think Havard's try, I don't know how much credit he was given, because he put on some really good footwork, but just as he caught the ball he put on a great step, and it's the speed of his line that he managed to maintain that speed as well after the step. I thought it was a hard one to stop. I know people want to be able to stop a forward that close to the line when 3 or 4 defenders had a crack at him, but I think credit Havard. To me, he was man of the match in this game. He was brilliant.
Yeah, and then I think I agree more with where is it? Somebody who's saying not necessarily Callum Percy. Some of the errors from Connor weren't necessarily solely his fault. If you're in support and stand and running the line just behind him, you've got to expect that you might see the ball.
Yeah, and it was both sides with errors like that, weren't it? It seemed like for a period when it was 18-all, every time either side got across the halfway line, someone threw a bad pass. Smith threw one at his runner's head rather than into the hands of the man out the back. There was one. Then there was the Connor one to Vulik and Chapani, weren't it, where he slipped it behind his back, and that worked earlier in the game. You'd got very close to scoring. Some great goal line defence by Wigan kept him out in the first half from almost an identical play. So, it had worked earlier. But both teams were guilty of errors in that period. And to be honest, the difference in that last 10 minutes, was Liam Farrell's run.
It was, yeah, and I don't feel that Luke Gill stepped up at all.
No, and people were talking, saying Smith's drop goal wasn't like brilliant or what have you. I thought it was pretty decent. It was from 40 metres out. It's not easy. I mean, Gale tried one from 40 metres out and only made the 10-yard line.
Yeah. I think also Hodgson was slightly to blame in his bench selection because he had Connor Wynn on the bench who never got on. And I think you either have to bring him on, for a little bit of fizz, a little bit of, a bit of speed, to do the equivalent of what Liam Marshall did, make that break or, do something. Or you go with a fourth forward on the bench again to give yourself a bit more because it's going to be an attritional match.
Yeah, I don't think either team had too many players playing in this match. Like Wigan noticeably missed KPP's offloading, for example, and there wasn't players blowing the game apart other than Lovadua, who was really good for you, and Connor, who tried some stuff, and then Field for us, really, outside of that, and Bateman to an extent. But yeah, you're right. It did seem strange that he didn't bring him on. You're either bringing him on, maybe for Vulika Japani himself actually, or you're having someone who can match up power for power, because Wigan were able to be pretty well rested in the forwards in the second half, to be honest, and used him quite well to be able to put say like Mago, who's more our running offloading threat. He was on at the crucial times when we needed to score points rather than when we had to defend necessarily. Yeah.
I just think that that's just we don't have many substitutions allowed in the game. Let's be wise with them and wise with using those four players.
Yeah. I've called out some of the Wigan players I thought did well, noting I think Farrell's best display in a few weeks. Lovadua, I'd say, was great for you, ball in hand. It's a shame he had that missed tackle on Field that blotted his game a little bit. But who else stood out for Hull for you?
I think Griffin made some really good yards. He's been really strong. Whilst Gale's been out, he's really led led the team well. And his stats, I think he's been in the stats roundup practically every week.
Oh yeah, he's in my dream. He's in my fantasy team.
Cervellia also had a good game, I thought. Jack Brown didn't make his customary 2 knock-ons in a match, which was good. I think it was one of those matches that probably for both teams, you couldn't say now that he was the star player.
Yeah, and that's kind of reflected with Powell getting Sky Man of the match as well. Field got a lot of praise elsewhere and stuff, and Havard for me was the best player on the pitch. So
yeah, I felt like, well, I guess like you'd expect in a match that finished 19-18, it's fairly equal, isn't it?
And do you know what? I would have been disappointed if Wigan had lost the game, but in the same token, I could have taken it, because I do think it was one of those games that was evenly poised. It was quite entertaining. Even the errors from both sides that kind of broke a few of our chances for both sides didn't put me off the overall enjoyment of the game because of the closeness of it. So
yeah, I mean, I was frustrated come the end and disappointed, but I think my takeaway from it was actually if we play like this every week, we're going to win more than we lose.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
And if we had and I think it did ultimately come down to that break of Liam Farrell's and our lack of composure.
Yep. Good game to watch. Let's move on to a game that we didn't see, so we don't know too much about, but we'll see what gaps we can fill in on it. Castleford versus Toulouse. Oh crap, I put the same half-time score as full-time score, so I don't know what the half-time score was, but it finished 32 points to 6 to Cass, in front of 7,006.
At half-time to Cass.
Sorry, what was that?
20-0 to Cass at half-time.
Makes sense. The game was over by half-time. Marcus Griffiths was the referee. In the terms of the team stats, Cass made nearly 250 more metres at a big 2.7 metres per carry better average gain. They actually had fewer carries than Toulouse, but made 250 more metres. 9 breaks to 2 and 5 tries to 1 shows that they made more happen with the ball, a lot more happen with the ball than Toulouse did. Individually, who stood out, Sarah?
So individually, for Castleford, it was Beretta Farema, maybe redeeming himself with 232 metres and 2 clean breaks. Jordan Turner with 1 try assist and 192 metres. Jake Mamer with 1 try and 124 metres. And George Lawler with 40 tackles and 100 metres. For the losing Toulouse side, Ollie Ashall-Bolt made 158 metres, Chris Hankinson with 127 metres, Matty Russell with 111 metres, and Justin Sangar with 103 metres.
Do you want to do the first fan view? Because I've got a second one that came in late that's not on your sheet.
Yeah, so Brian Davies got in touch and said, it was great to catch up with Rob again. The train didn't let me down this time. Toulouse never looked like we were going to score enough points to win any game tonight. The high tackle on Ollie Ashall-Bolt for an HIA killed us off. We went from 6-0 to 20-0 down and game over. Defensively, we were much better but had little in attack. Not quite sure why I traded my Toulouse bubble hat for a Cass one, but the local lad seemed chuffed.
He just wanted to see you take your hat off and shake that beautiful mane out, Brian. That's what he wanted. Fatboy Rob said, professional performance from the born-again Tigers. The result was never in doubt once Super Greg went over to extend his record of scoring in successive games to at least 50. Fact check that one, Neil. He also set up the next one for Evold, and it was game over. Radders rested him in the second half, which resulted in the score remaining below 40. Toulouse had plenty of chances to score, but Cass have finally got their goal line defence right. That's one thing actually that I noticed when I was reading some write-ups of this game, because from the highlights and from the scoreline and stuff, you just think it was all Cass scoring tries. It does sound like there were a couple of periods in the game where Cass's defence was solid and resilient, and basically Toulouse didn't ask a lot of questions, but part of that might have been down to the hard work that Cass put in defensively to cover everything up. So that's a big positive for Cass. But the highlights, I don't know if you watched them, Sarah. There's not much to write home about from them, really, I thought.
No, this was a match I didn't get around to watching the highlights of.
Yeah, it just looked like a regulation steady win for the better side, really. It did, the result and the highlights, they do sort of suggest the difference between these sides is way bigger than the starting table had them both on the same points, just one position apart. So that's shows that Cass are starting to go in the right direction, whereas Toulouse still haven't quite found it, even though they beat Saints, which was fantastic. And Cass, they beat what was in front of them. That's good. That's all they can do. And Rob mentioned it. They were able to rest some people up as well, like not take chances on people who had knocks and things like that as the game went on. So a successful night for them. Sylvain Houls mentioned it in his comments after the match, and I think you notice it massively from the highlights as well, but there was too many missed tackles by Toulouse. It got themselves in trouble. It meant their defence was tired out because they had to make extra efforts. It got people out of position and shape as well because they were all kind of scrambling to get back into some sort of position defensively, and it did make it bad for them. It caused them problems, and there was some weak efforts on the tackles before the tackle play that the try was scored on, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But for all that, their try that they scored when they were actually down to 12 men right at the end of the game, it was really nice flowing offloading rugby that you expect from Toulouse. So they've still got that.
Yeah.
Don't know if you've seen the sim bin in. I saw a Toulouse. You never really see the French fans reacting to the social media stuff in English. Mm-hmm. But I saw a Toulouse fan go at the RFL disciplinary post this week about stuff to do with this game and the sin bin on Albert. And I've got to say, I've got some sympathy there because it did look harsh. I think he was sin bin for kicking out, but it actually looked like Jake Mamo pulled his leg. kind of rather than him actually kicking him. So I thought it was 6 of one and half of the dozen in the other that. So nothing out of the disciplinary for Albert. So it probably, it didn't make a difference to anything, but it did look harsh, that one.
Yeah, and when things are going against you, they end up really going against you, don't they? And